Hello again, Struckweb. Today I'm bringing you more news about Torchlight 3, previously known as Torchlight Frontiers. And this would be an overview of all the changes, all the nerfs, buffs, and things that may not have been disclosed with the announcement of Torchlight 3. This is update 10, and it brings a ton of new things for you to be excited about. One thing I would like to inform you about is currently the game is under an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, which means we can talk about the game, we can share content from the previous versions of the game, but I cannot show you any footage of the current build, current state of the game. So all the footage you would be seeing is from Torchlight Frontiers rather than Torchlight 3. It's kind of still the same game, but it's a different game as well. There are a lot of similarities to both games, but in its core they are completely different ones. So, let's start with the changes. One of the first changes that everyone has been discussing, whether it's a good or a bad one, I'll leave it up to you to decide. It's the change from free to play to premium model, which means you buy the game for a price and you get the full game, all of the content and more. So, then another good thing, another big thing that many people are happy about and few are unhappy about is the remove of the horizontal progression. I've been reading different forums, different websites, and I've been seeing very mixed opinions about the whole change to premium, the whole change of the horizontal to a standard act-based progression. So I understand not everyone is fond of all the changes, but I think it's for the better myself. I'm a big fan of the game and I've been playing it since April 2019, and I can tell you those changes that they've done are for the better for the game. Then there's a new, better story that takes you through the journey via adding cinematics, via kind of making it more personal, making it not just one guy out of many, but you kind of feel a connection to the story in a way. There's a lot of new bosses, and there's good mechanics for those bosses. Before, what we had was very underwhelming end of dungeon boss fights in most of the zones. So they've updated the big bosses of the specific story dungeons, and they've also updated the end of dungeon bosses for the regular map works. There's also map works that take us just to a boss fight, not through a whole 1, 2, 3 map period, but it's just one map. Sometimes it's just gonna be just a boss fight, sometimes it's gonna be just a dungeon, and the phasic beasts also allow us to go to such dungeons as well, only boss fights sometimes. Another major change is adding a third act. I'm gonna go in detail about it in a moment. Then another good thing, good big change is the new fourth quest, which is completely unexpected. They kept it under wraps. We knew that it was coming, but everyone assumed it's gonna come with update 11, probably not with update 10. So that surprised us and it's pretty nice. The character leveling is improved, but I have not gone past 48 on one character because I wanted to level a bit on every. So on the sharpshooter I went to 48, then I went to like 32 with the realm master, like 10 with forged, and barely even touched the disc mage, but I think I got enough information to share with you regarding changes, buffs, nerfs, etc. Something you might notice is that the new story includes also war objects that are not part of the story, but give an extra spice to the whole thing, to the whole atmosphere, the whole universe. Then you would see that there's two new towns. One of them is still heavily under construction. That's probably one of the reasons why it's under NDA. They don't want to show unfinished stuff online. They don't want people to be showing the unfinished stuff before it's ready. It's for marketing purposes, from what I've heard from Max Schaefer himself. He says the marketing gods need to be appeased before the NDA needs to be lifted. So you would see the cinematics bringing the narrative and the world building to what us, the fans, and some of the people from Extra themselves felt was missing. The grind is gone, from what we can tell. That actually is true. And again, as I said, we all wanted a new class, and They spent over a year trying to bring this class to us, and now it's here. The sharpshooter, a powerful and nimble ranged character. Then the relic crafting and gold economy has been improved. Then there's improvements to the UIs and also to the party play. You can even resurrect players now. There's legendary items that have been improved. Oh, every single legendary item has specific legendary affix attached to it, which is no longer just a stronger version of the rare item, but each legendary item feels unique and you want to use it for a certain setup with a certain skill, for a certain build with that skill, or another skill, or a combination between two skills. So definitely a lot of stuff to look forward to. And then also the skill respec system. Something amazing that allows for a lot of things to be fixed, to be remedied. Like you need to invest certain points into certain skill, and you also need to invest certain points into a certain relic skill in order to unlock the ones above them. But just like devotions in Grim Dawn, if you unlock some skills and spend some points into that skill tree to keep those skills self-sufficient, you can remove the skill points you've placed into something that you no longer want, and that way a skill that requires 15 points into a certain skill tree, and you put those 15 points and then you put some extra points into this skill itself, that means that the points you no longer need in previous skills, you can remove them bit by bit as long as you maintain that requirement for this skill. That allows for some very nice flexibility with the relic skill setup, which I really wanted. And speaking of relics, there was changes to those as well. They're no longer relic weapons. I'm gonna go in detail about that in a moment. First, let's talk about the new act. Act 3 takes place in the mountains of Econog and is now ready for testing. We can continue our quest to put down the Nether incursion while exploring the ancient halls of the Dwarven architects. Step carefully as you navigate the craggy peaks where scheming Vultura have made their home, and be sure to grab plenty of new wood. Believe me, there is plenty of new wood, even though there were some bugs where some of the new wood was not available for one of the classes. We reported it and they were quick to remedy that. And speaking of classes, the sharpshooter. Let's go into detail about that class. It's, as I expected, a rogue class, typical rogue class, and it's actually a ranged one as well. Nimble, cunning, and willing to bend the rules. The sharpshooter uses incredible skill with ranged weapons and magical trinkets to take on enemies from afar. Most of the sharpshooter class skills are available for testing now, with a couple more coming soon. What I can tell you from my experience by playing this class is it's incredibly fun and it has various options where you want to play it as a more of a summoner, poisoner, kind of with a bane, or maybe you want to play it as someone who dishes out range damage with some of the skills. There's a skill that you can charge, there's a skill that has longer cooldown but does a lot of damage, then there's a spammy skill, there's a lot of things, and basically she has two skill trees. Adventurer skill tree, which is a kind of adventurer skill buffs from all of those adventurer skills, buffing the other skill tree which is called precision. And precision skill tree is kind of the damage one, the one where you have the archer, boyar kind of skills. So the adventurer skills are something that either debuffs the enemies or applies a poison on them or makes them take more damage or makes them deal less damage, and something like for example there's a skill that allows us to do a short range teleport that kind of gives us kind of like invisibility, and the enemies don't attack us and things like that, but as soon as we attack we exit this mode, and then we actually get increased crit chance for the next three skills from the precision tree during this buff. So it's kind of a combination. It gives you a buff and you can only have one adventurer skill buff. So let's read what they wrote. In addition to each skill's combat effect, adventurer skills apply a buff stack which grants added power to the next 3 precision skills used. These effects are different depending on which adventurer skill was last used. So as I said, one of them would apply vulnerability to the enemies and make them take more damage. Another one would make them deal less damage, and you would be able to spread it to other enemies. And then there's one that allows them to get poisoned, but also gives you a buff to shoot extra 3 conal arrows, projectiles I mean. So yeah, there's different ones, different effects for each of them, and you definitely might want to experiment with different setups while using those. Then there's the class exclusive item, which is a two-handed ranged weapon, a bow, and only sharpshooters can use this. And speaking of class exclusive things, some other things have been changed. Class exclusive armors have been removed. So if you find an armor from one frontier, actually it's not even called frontier, it's just one specific set from one specific act. If you find that armor, let's say you find Woods Beast, which is the Goblin Act armor. So you find the piece, you find for example a helmet on the sharpshooter, then you go on and play a disc mage or a forged or a realm master and you level it to the same level this item was dropped. You can equip that same item on the other class. Before it was different. Before, if you find an armor for the forged, it would only be used for the forged. If you find one on a disc mage, only used by the disc mage. And they had slightly different names most of the times. Now they've generalized the names. You've got Wood Beast, then you've got Skittering, and then you've got Celestial. And then you should have one more which is for the new frontier, but I haven't seen that one. What I've noticed is the Wood Beast is always fire. The one that's Skittering is always poison. The Celestial can drop with any defense, either defense, fire defense, poison defense, or with shock or whitening defense. So keep a lookout on good gear and save it if you're planning on playing outs. Save some of the good gear for your outs. Then let's talk about some other new things for the classes, such as each class getting a new skill. The Realm Master got Shocking Rounds, which is on the conductor tree. On the terrain tree, it causes the turret card to conduct electrical energy into its bullets, increasing damage and arcing to nearby enemies. Activating the skill causes the arc damage to hit even more enemies at once. Then there's for the Forged Furnace Blast, which is on the broad tree and it requires heat to cast. While channeling this skill, heat is continually drained to power a jet of flame shooting out of the forged chest cannon, damaging all enemies in a line and setting them on fire. Then there is the Disc Mage's Shadow Step, which is on the Dark skill tree. It's a movement skill which uses charges, and the Disc Mage teleports to a new location while releasing a blast of energy at the start location. Hitting enemies with the energy blast returns mana. Now I wanted to share some knowledge about something that has changed regarding a mechanic of one of the Realm Master skills, which is the Hammer Spin. First of all, the Hammer Spin now only lasts for a second, this buff that you get, but I've noticed doing more damage. Maybe it's just me, but I've noticed it doing more damage. Another thing that changed for the Realm Master is Spike Drive. We used to be able to do circular pattern of how the spikes spread out. Now the way they spread out is similar to energy spike on the disc mage. It's a cone now, so it's doing a cone of 5 spikes which keep going forward. And this is amazing because that means you can focus all the damage in one point if you're close to the enemy. You don't spread out the damage in a lot of different places, but you focus it in one single point. Of course it keeps spreading as it goes further away from you, but if you're close to the enemy it's gonna be pretty solid. Now let's talk about what's new with the relics. They are no longer relic weapons, they're just relics and they just give you the effects and the skills without switching your weapon with the relic that you have equipped. So it's pretty good being that way. You can use any weapon without replacing its effect, without losing a shield effect or a staff or a two-handed or one-handed effect and bonuses while having the effect of the relic. There's two new ones with a third new one coming. So at the moment we've got five and the sixth one is coming soon. The two new ones are the Electrode, which is summon violent bursts of lightning and chaotic storms to blast your foes. Upgrades increase your ability to apply stun and shock status effects and trigger bonus lightning strikes when attacking shocked enemies. It's very fun. I've played with this one in my first playthrough and I can tell you it can be amazing. Probably not as strong for some setups as some of the other ones we've seen, but it's definitely up there. It can be built in such a way to dish out tons of damage. Some people would say it's very random and they'd rather have the sure damage, the one that they know is there always and it's not random, but I personally advise test it. I mean, if you don't like it, then change it. Getting relics is super easy. Now you craft them with a generalized system. All relics can be crafted from the same universal type of ember core. And those ember cores drop like crazy from all the end of map bosses, and at one point you would have so many that you would already have all your relic weapons crafted that you want, and you would be selling those relic cores, ember cores, 400 gold each, and using the money to gamble for new gear. But more about that later. Let's tell you about the Cold Heart, the second relic weapon that is new for us. Crush enemies beneath the frigate glacier while your ice golem pounds them into rubble. Upgrades cause enemies who attack you to become frozen and drop a massive cascade of ice spikes during relic activation. So as I said, there's a relic system changes, and as I said, they drop from the end of dungeon bosses as well as major bosses like White Bolt, Strong Tusk, Kronk, etc. And there's chances to get a lot of cores. I think up to 6 cores per run, between 1 and 6, sometimes 0, but rarely. Also keep in mind Torchlight 3 is now on Steam, not on the Perfect World Entertainment's Arc launcher. Now let's talk about the Gambler. Randu the Gambler is an NPC that you can find in any of the 3 towns, and for a very cheap fee he would sell you different items, and that's a very nice way to catch up with some gear that's falling behind by a few levels. In a way, he feels like cheating because at the moment he's giving so much legendary and blue items that you would feel it's Christmas and Easter all together at the same time. Basically, it costs like 225 for some of the armor pieces, 300 for the weapons, offhands, etc. So that's barely anything. You get gold easily, and those numbers are okay. 20,000 is the limit of gold you can carry. And since you can lose up to 10% of your money when you die if you have more than 3,000, if you want to resurrect at the place where you died, you'd rather not keep that much money within you, and I strongly advise while leveling up to just keep spending your gold on gambling and maybe keeping just a few gold coins, like few hundred, 500-600 gold coins for resurrection when needed when entering a map. I suggest going for like 4, 5, 6,000, then spending all of that on certain items until you get a blue or a legendary, then moving on to another item piece, and strongly suggest going for weapons and offhands if you're using an offhand uh, to maximize your DPS at all times. It's always nice to keep your weapon up to date while leveling up in Torchlight 3. Now let's talk about some quality of life changes that were introduced, such as the item nameplates, damage numbers, reviving allies. First of all, the item nameplates, as you can see from some of the screenshots I'm sending you, which were released in the Trello public board. Um, so I should be able to share those with you even though there's an NDA. Those have not been taken by me, they have been released by the developers themselves. So that's some preview of the nameplates, and then you can just hold out and you would see the text, pretty neat. Then there's those damage numbers, you can turn them on or off as a toggle. By default they would be switched off, but you can turn them on and you would be able to see colorful numbers. Based on the damage type that's being dealt, you're gonna see a different color. Then there's ally resurrection. While in a party, players now enter a down state after losing all their health. Down players can be revived by an ally who stands inside the revive ring displayed on the ground. After a period of time, players in the down state will fully expire and must select one of the self-revive options. The max duration of your down state is reduced each time an ally revives you, and restored to full after traveling or using a self-revive. Of course, hardcore characters do not enter the down state and cannot be revived. Then let's talk about ranged weapons, which are pistols and rifles. All characters can equip those, and it's the one-handed pistols and the two-handed rifles. Those weapon types, they're pretty fun and you might wanna have a go at them. The sharpshooter can also use their class exclusive weapon, the two-handed bow as I said, but only the sharpshooter can use it. So pistols and rifles for the other classes. Here's some images that have been released on the Trello board that you might wanna have a look at. Definitely some cool designs. I wish I could share more, but there will be more being shared for each of those things I've talked about in detail, all the systems once the NDA is lifted. Then there's legendary gear. All legendary items have been overhauled with affixes that add or modify combat mechanics, and many new legendary items are now in the game. For example, you can see items like a Frost Wall, which activates ice armor when you fall to low HP, briefly preventing all damage and freezing nearby enemies. Then the Raging Beater, which is for the forged ramming robot being able to vent. You're gonna see some screenshots. I've already made a video about this with some work in progress early images that were shared with us, but some of the images that you're seeing now are kind of what is in the game. There again images from the travel board, so hopefully you would have fun with those. Then there was a winter challenge, community design challenge, and LV or Elf, I'm not sure how to pronounce his or her name, won this challenge, and the weapon that was designed was the Holy Icon. Summon angelic alpaca minions to blast foes with holy projectiles. An amazingly fun item. Then there's armor dice. Currently you can get those from contracts only, and later there would be more options in regards how to get those. Basically that's like tinting an armor in a certain color, but it's only for armors, not for weapons. Then another good quality of life thing is the respectables. The respectables are points that players can earn starting at level 5, and they're earned every 10 levels. Or you can consume a respectable item, and so far the only place I've seen those respectable items coming from would be the reworked contract system. More about that in a moment. So you can spend those to refund skill points, but you can also spend those to refund relic skill tab skill points as well. So any class can use them, and in order to use them you just need to craft a class skill station, go to that class skill station in your fort and decide which skill you want to reduce by 1. You're only reducing a certain skill by 1 for each respectable point. And as I said, every 10 levels you get one of those points starting at level 5. So at 5, 15, 25, 35 and so on, you would be getting 1. You would as well, as I said, get one or more of those throughout doing contracts, and contracts have been reworked and reward only one row of rewards, and they go all the way to level 40 instead of 60, but after 40 they start over from repeating some of the rewards. Not exactly the same rewards, but they keep going after 40. They reset back to level 1. And speaking of them, Fame points now drop from any champion or boss kill and whenever any quest is completed, except for account quest. And this is where they've reworked Mapworks. Mapworks now includes some special quests, Mapwork quests, such as kill those enemies, do this, do that, and once you complete this, you get some extra fame. So there's no longer a weekly grind fame quest, there's no longer job board, bounty board mechanic, there's no longer this annoying stuff. Thankfully, thank you extra for this change. And yeah, Mapworks levels, as I said, can provide an area quest, but not all Mapwork areas have this quest content yet. And the number of levels in one-time and repeating contract section is rebalanced and rewards have been condensed. There's 4 decor items in the one-time section being replaced with recipes for those items, and we are now allowed to craft as much of that item as we want after the recipe is unlocked. It's not a one-time use only. Additional reward types have also been added, such as the dice respectables and enchanting recipes to those contracts rewards. And now one more thing we might wanna mention is the new monsters. In addition to a wide variety of new monsters found in the Econop Mountains, Goblin and Hivit infested zones have also been populated with new enemies such as the Thorn Strider for the Goblin Frontier, which is a hulking trend, and he has some interesting mechanics that kind of are slow when you can dodge them, but he would broadcast where he would attack on the ground with some vines coming from the ground. So he will make the very ground beneath you a treacherous place to be. Watch for its many patterns of vine spikes which adapt on the fly to your tactics. Then there's the Burrower, a behemoth-sized, armor-plated insectoid, which kinda reminds me of a mixture between the insects in Diablo 2 and the ones in Grim Dawn. Kind of a mashup between those if I were to describe it to someone who has played those games. This beastly bug is tough to bring down, akin to stone, elementals or nethering brutes, and can dig a tunnel into the ground to reposition and protect itself. And what I've noticed is when he comes out of the ground, it kind of does damage to you, so you have to be careful. You're gonna see a broadcast of some dust on the ground before it appears, so you can avoid it. Then there's the Nethering Herald, which is a creepy definitely someone you would enjoy fighting. This one we will let you encounter for yourself is what the developers said, and yeah, I definitely don't want to spoil much of it, but he looks very proper Netherim. He's kind of like what I imagine Netherims to look like. Then there's additions, updates to the shrines. The shrines really needed to be modified. I've been asking for some more changes to those, and they made them better. How? Well, currently the duration is reduced to 20 seconds from 45 seconds, but each has a more potent effect. For example, the basic defense shrines like fire defense, poison defense, or the lightning defense, now instead of just giving you the defense boost, also do some novas. Novas every few seconds. Every second there's going to be a nova like. You take it, and then for those 20 seconds, as you move, the enemies around you would be taking the specific damage type based on the frontier. Then there's the speed shrine, which increases the movement speed by 30%, not 50, but 30 now, but it also gives you attack speed 60%. And the healing shrine restores 33% of your max health per second, and before it was only 20%. And the skill shrine replaces the shrine of energy, and what this does is it reduces all cooldowns by 50% while active, instead of increasing resource regeneration. And this evenly affects all characters in an impactful way rather than resource management, which has different mechanics in each class, and sometimes you might not want the resource generation in one class. So definitely a good change, and again Might Shrine raises the crit chance to 100% for the duration rather than increasing crowd damage. And as I said, Smoldering and Plague Shrine together with the new Lightning one give you 100,000 defense and do Nova pulses every second. Then there's other improvements such as character customization, which is still work in progress. Even in the travel board you can see it's work in progress, but what you would notice is there's different face types, different heads for the forged, which is pretty fun seeing all those forge heads. And you can control the face, hair and hair color and skin color um, when creating your new character. There are a few selections available with a whole lot more coming down the art pipeline. Then there's overlay map. It's still glitchy, pretty glitchy, but I'm happy for that feature to be there. I'm someone who cannot play properly ARPGs without having an option to have the overlay map without needing to stop. Because before we needed to stop moving, to press M to open the big map, and that makes us stop and look at our quests. But now we can use the overlay, even though it's glitchy, it's still better. And then they've improved the wood fountain, which is a trademark, I guess, as a expression, the wood fountain technology, which is items spreading out better on the ground, spraying more gloriously when you kill enemies. Then there's a tutorial for enchanting, I'm not gonna say more about it. Then there's shock status, which is very interesting. When you get shocked, what happens is you cannot activate your relic, you cannot cast your relic active skill for the duration of the shock, and if those skills are already on cooldown, the cooldown duration is paused while the player is shocked. Pretty interesting. Then there's also improvements to the pet AI, then there's more pet skills. I'm not gonna say much to spoil them, but there are some interesting pet skills, which one of them I'm gonna spoil is the Necropupper, which allows your pet to summon skeletons. So for a summoner build you would definitely want this one in one of the skill bars for the pet. Then there's player movement. Tons of work has gone into smoothing player movement and navigation to reduce cases where characters get stuck on edges and corners. I'm not gonna go into detail about this one. And then there's minion indicators. All player summoned minions now have a ring underneath them, which is still nice, but sometimes the minions would cluster up next to each other and you won't be able to tell which ones where. So I spoke about all of the changes, but let's answer some of the questions from the frequently asked questions section. Now let's talk about, will the alpha continue? Absolutely 100%. Developer community connection has always been an important part of Torchlight, and we believe the best games are made with player input along the way. Alpha players have already helped shape the game in so many ways, big and small, and we're counting on them to keep being part of the Torchlight journey, is what was answered in the FAQ question. Then what happens to my progress during the alpha, if you're wondering? Well, during the rest of the alpha beta stages there will be much more test driven progression data, and expect to see helper NPCs that allow us to skip to a different act or provide us with useful items to play with. So that's going to be interesting to help us test more of the new stuff, more of the content at the end of the acts, act 3, act 2, etc. Maybe even act 4 if it gets added, but probably that's a better thing. This would help us kick the tires on a wide range of game content in a short time. Clearly those cheated account data aren't appropriate to carry into the released game, so there will be wipes. All of the progress would be wiped before the final launch. So there will be multiple wipes, and at the end, before the final launch of the game, there will be a big one. Will there be a beta? Yes. The focus during alpha stage is more on feedback and getting the game to play great, but beta testing would focus on stability of the game service and finding any last issues that would affect players at launch. Pretty nice. Now what happens to Lux charges? They will be refunding all the Lux charges made during the alpha phase, so you would be getting all the money back if you spent any. Then what happens to the alpha rewards? They would be making every effort to carry forward cosmetic thank you items that we've acquired during the alpha, and once you're able to restore those on the Steam platform, we will announce the details to alpha players, is what was written. So will there continue to be updates during the alpha? Of course there will be. They will still be making regular patches and releasing content as it becomes available. Actually today and yesterday on the Discord there were talks about planning to release weekly patches in the first few stages now when we are testing seriously the game as it's brand new on Steam. Then what has become of the horizontal progression system? As I've already mentioned, that has been gone. Then will there still be microtransactions? No. No longer any in-game shop items, any in-game purchases whatsoever. Will the game always be online? No. Currently it is always online, but later on they would add the ability to play offline characters, but keep in mind that online characters can only be played online in order to ensure a cheat-free experience for everyone participating in the connected game. Whereas offline characters can be played without an internet connection, but they cannot be played online with others. Of course, since we are alpha players at the moment, we would not have access to offline mode for now. And in regards to what Steam features there would be supported, the game would support Steam Friends and achievements, and they're already excited about the other features Steam opens up. They would also be adopting the community features on Steam in the coming weeks as another great way to interact with players. As for signups, you can still sign up at torchlightfrontiers.com, playtorchlight.com or torchlight3.com. All those domains would take you to the same place, and you would be able to sign up for the newsletter, and that also signs you up for the alpha testing. There will be more invites sent on regular basis, so keep an eye out for your emails. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more content and updates regarding Torchlight 3, Wolves and Words of Mayhem, Warhammer Chaos Bane or Borderlands 3. Feel free to also leave a like or dislike and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, keep it cool and until next time. Goodbye.